I can see it. It didn't give me an audible.
It says we're recording, so we're going to just go hot, go live, go now. Good morning, Team Empower Me. It's so good to see everybody. Hands
Good
up.
morning.
Morning.
I'm super pumped. Thank you guys so much for getting up early and hanging out with us today. Um, real quick pop quiz. How many of you guys got a chance to attend the kickoffs?
Yeah.
How were they? Were they good?
Amazing, as always.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was nice
I
to be
missed
back
them.
together.
Nice to be back together. Yeah.
Yes.
How did I heard somebody did a presentation on Power Me. How did that guy do?
Did this joke about the top
Okay.
starting at the bottom and nobody got it, and
Oh,
I
that's
thought
good.
it was great.
That's good feedback. Yeah, I think I was a little too clever with that. Well, hey, and it's shameless, me looking for recognition and such. But I gotta tell you, really super pumped to be asked to do that in the kickoff, and not so much because we have the program, but because what you guys make of this program. It's like every week, every month, I'm bringing stories to Kenyon about really the hard work, dedication, and commitment that you guys bring to it. So, just wanted to call that out, say thank you guys so much. As promised, too, in the kickoff, if you remember, when I was going through the list of the topics in your playbook, I had mentioned how taking full responsibility was literally a game changer in people's careers. So, this is really, for me, one of the highlights of your overall experience. To bring this topic to you in its full kind of gravity, we have a special guest here, the Better Sharples. On record, I said it, but Miss Amanda Sharples is going to lead you through a conversation. So, without further ado, Miss Amanda, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And I am honored to be here because this is honestly one of my most favorite leadership topics. It's something that I hold near and dear to my heart. And it's something that never stops contributing to you. So it's something that hopefully, you'll take with you and you'll continue to apply it. And the cool thing is that it's this concept or these concepts that we'll discuss today aren't solely applicable just to your professional life. Many of the concepts that we'll review today or talk about have relevance in every aspect of your life and can absolutely be game changing. So you guys probably took a few moments, hopefully, to read through the articles that were provided on the one pager for this month's content. And it's really about taking full responsibility. So, what does that mean? Because I'll be honest, I spoke to this topic last session, so last year, and over the space of 12 months, so much has happened that I had to go back and review the content just to ground myself in the material. What did it mean to you? What did you guys gather from these readings?
I can definitely speak to one of the articles. So before I had made the change and come over here, I know one of my biggest mindset shifts was the whole taking responsibility piece. And it went from, there was one of the articles that said something about stop complaining and just be grateful for the moment and the lessons that you can learn from it. Um, when I had tried to move forward and move forward, and I felt like I was just kind of treading water at that point, I realized I had a big mind shift change to make because maybe it was my negative attitude. And I try not to like project a negative attitude, but there was something inside me that I could feel that just didn't feel right. And I noticed once I started taking, okay, what can I take for this feedback? That whole feedback is a gift thing. Sometimes I feel like we forget about that. And what can I take and make and use to my advantage so that I can make the changes that I need to get to the next level. And then just kind of seeing these just kind of resurface that for me, because I think a big part of it is being responsible for your own mindset, because mindset can really control what you're putting out as far as your development and for your personal. So I'm actually going to take one of these articles and cascade it down to my team that I have right now, because I think it would be really helpful with some mindset stuff and really kind of helping push them forward and make sure that they're successful here too. So
Awesome. Wow, there's so much to unpack there. Like you gave us so many good topics to explore. So let's start with the feedback, right? Feedback can hurt. It can be painful, right? But I would say the majority of the time, feedback that we receive is well intentioned, right? Think about if someone really isn't invested in you, or maybe some self reflection. If you're not necessarily invested in another individual, do you take the time to give them feedback, or are you like, meh, you just kind of write it off, right? So on the receiving end of that, knowing that that feedback, even though it hurts and maybe you don't understand it right away, you've got to take time, you've got to process. There's something within that is so powerful, and that is your ability to control you. That's the one thing that we have in our lives that we have absolute control over, and it's ourselves and how we respond. And as much as I'd like to say we're all complete and total experts because it's us, I don't know that that's ever a journey that's complete, because we're evolving, we're growing, we're becoming something new and different. And then, of course, factoring in everything around us. It's so important to have feedback so that someone can give you an outside perspective of something that you just may not be aware of. Awesome, Sam. I love it. Um, Gosh, there are so many other nuggets in there. What else stood to you guys that Sam shared, or maybe something that you picked up from one of the articles?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I noticed. Am I on mute? No, I'm not. Okay. Is last year or last time I did Empower Me, this section was full of a lot of hypotheticals. I didn't really know even where to go with handling this particular segment. This time around, a lot different because I've implemented a lot of stuff from last Empower Me, and I can kind of analyze this better and see how it applies. But also, I looked back at previous experiences. I looked at when I first started at T-Mobile like 8 years ago and thought about what my mindset was there, what changes I made in my life, things like that, so I could actually take real life applicable situations that I've done. I mean, it was huge changes for me. I never had a legitimate job where this is a job I'm going to have for a long time. This is a steady job. It's these hours. Um, so I thought about what changes I actually had to make in my life and what I needed to do to take full responsibility for that. One of the biggest changes right now is now that I've seeked out opportunities at T-Mobile and looked at what I want to do, I've worked on taking responsibilities, and especially when it comes to time management. The reason why I wasn't at the meeting last night was because I started taking an online class on um, Excel and really just wanted to find out,
Nice.
tips and perfect that because I know how to use Excel, but I think everyone knows how to use Excel, but I want to know how to do it well. So it's really going through this 2 times around, I've really been able to look at segments like this and apply it better to how it can benefit me.
Awesome. Joel, if you don't mind, and again, if I'm taking liberties, tell me, but can you share anything about your mindset from, say, when you started at T-Mobile versus maybe last year's Empower Me sessions, and then
hmm
now, like what was the mindset shift for you?
I needed money. I wanted a job. I wanted a stable life when I first started working here. And before that, I kind of jumped around. I was doing the wrestling thing, kind of traveling, kind of really trying to make a hobby a profession.
Mhm.
Um, when I first started at T-Mobile, I'm like, well, I need some money. They pay well. I'll save up some money and I'll use it to continue that. And then when I started here, I realized, there's a lot of benefits of staying at T-Mobile, and maybe I don't need to do this. Maybe it's better for my life. Maybe my passion isn't what I thought it was, and what I wanted to do isn't that. So then I had to start exploring different things. It wasn't just that point, though. Then I'm like, I'm going to stay in this job. It honestly wasn't until a little before the pandemic that I realized maybe I want to have a career here. And that's where my mindset changed again. Um, I want to say it was Callie that had spoken to us and had brought up the college tuition reimbursement situation, and it was on that day I signed up for that, and I finished a degree in uh,
Awesome.
business administration paid for by T-Mobile. So that was the next change in mindset where I realized I want to continue my education as well and really see where I can take this as a career. So the biggest change in mindset was job to career.
Cool. I love that. One of the articles starts off talking about how you create your life and you're not just reacting to it, right? Like you, and again, I don't want to make assumptions, but I've just recently been working with someone on my community who has a very serious hobby hoping to turn professional, right? And so that could very easily be felt as almost a victim status, like, okay, I feel trapped because I really want to be doing this other thing, but I have to because of my circumstances. I'm the victim in this. I have to be doing X, Y, and Z. And you flip the script, put yourself in the driver's seat, and you said, you know what, let me look at this, let me understand where I want to go and what I want to accomplish for myself. And rather than making excuses or placing blame, you took responsibility to make the best of your situation and allow yourself to move forward and be successful despite the circumstances. So kudos to you. I love that. All right, so let me ask a couple other questions that came up for me. We work in a really tough industry, right? And I don't necessarily mean wireless, but customer service is a tough gig. As much as I'd like to sit and say that customers call in to high five us because things are awesome, that's not necessarily the case. So how do you navigate that in a way that allows you to feel in control and the owner of your destiny? Heavy stuff. I was going to start off by saying we're going to get deep this morning. So
Well,
sorry.
Amanda, I'll share something for me when I go back to my old school MBNA days that you may remember from a couple of years back. It used to drive me crazy to have unsatisfied customers. Like I hated the idea of a call ending and having them be pissed off, having them be unsatisfied. So for me, I made a game out of it. For my head, the only way that I could get through days after you're dealing with bad situation after bad situation is like I wanted them to thank me. Like when we were done with that call, I wanted to change the situation, manipulate our interactions, and put together a dialogue, a relationship that at the end of that call, that was my target, that was my trigger. So everything that I was doing, selfishly for me, was because I wanted to feel a positive interaction by the time that that was done. But ultimately for them, it was kind of a win-win because I was truly going way further than I needed to from the standpoint of the job expectations. And that was the way I was choosing to deal with it instead of being pissed off and complaining about it and saying there was no way you could fix the situation. They're at 29% interest rate and I'm going to offer them a cash advance and all these other things that just sounded like impossible situations. It became a challenge. So for me, it was making a game out of it, just to be able to find a method to move forward and past those difficult situations that ultimately had great results all the way around.
Awesome. I love it because at the end of the day, it's easy for us to internalize and take personal how the people around us, whether it's customers, peers, leaders, right? I think we have an incredible leadership at T-Mobile, but everyone has a bad day. And it's easy for us to maybe internalize that. And one of the most powerful statements I read in one of the articles was refuse to take anything personal. It's probably not about you. And once you can really truly embrace that concept, man, there's so much power in allowing you the ability to respond to any situation with calm confidence is another topic that was discussed, right? This confidence that you are the master of yourself. And it doesn't matter what shit show comes your way, you're going to handle it like a boss because you know you better than anybody else, right? If I may, I'd like to share something that also takes me back to my pre-T-Mobile days. And it's a leadership concept that I've shared, I think, oh man, too many times. So if you've heard it already, I'm sorry in advance. But I would be completely remiss if I didn't put this in front of you guys because it literally changed everything about the trajectory of my career. And to give you context, I started as a young leader, similar to a position of what we would have as a community expert. And at the time, I was not self-aware. That's a huge part of this, right? Like, you have to be self-aware. But good news, I got feedback. And man, it hurt. It hurt so deep. I was mortified to hear the way that I was being perceived. And I say the way I was being perceived, but honestly, the way that I was projecting myself, because again, I'm responsible for who I am and what I put out there, right? And so I had to learn how do I take what's inside of me and what I truly want to be known for, and how do I turn that into an outcome, right? So my leader at the time taught me this concept. It was developed by Stephen Covey, and it's one of the 7 habits of highly effective leaders. I think it's leaders. 7 highly effective. Is it leaders or people? 6 and 1.
I thought it was leaders, but
It's probably
It says
leaders.
people on the Google search.
Okay.
oh, well, there we go.
Thank
Take
you.
whatever I say and say the opposite, and that'll be the right answer.
That's the outcome. Okay, so one of the habits, and maybe it's not one of the habits, but it might be part of one of the habits. But basically, what it is, it teaches you how to respond effectively in any situation. And the concept is called the space between stimulus and response. Every single day, we are faced with stimuli. Like, there's so much out there that causes us to act or react or respond, hopefully. And what I found was that I was a very impulsive, reactionary, quite frankly, snarky person at that time. Still can be, but I try to use humor, and that kind of tempers things. Anyway, but I wasn't being wise about how what I was saying or doing was actually impacting the outcome that I didn't want. The outcome was, I was creating a brand of myself that wasn't in alignment with who I really wanted to be. And so that space I learned can be physical. Sometimes I would take a walk, right? If something really struck me the wrong way. And you know that feeling, like, where there's something that just kind of doesn't jive with you. Maybe it's with a customer, maybe it's a peer, maybe you're going through a tough coaching and you're like, oh, and you kind of have to bite your tongue, right? So I learned in the beginning I had to take a walk. Sometimes if it was really a really heavy conversation, I would wait a day. But that space is literal space where you kind of stop and you think about, okay, what do I want the outcome to be here? What am I hoping to accomplish? How do I want this person to feel? What do I want them to think about me? Like, how is this going to play out? And then you make a conscious decision to move yourself from that stimulus to how you're going to respond rather than just reacting. So that is the space between stimulus and response. The beautiful thing about it is, over time, you'll find the time and space needed becomes lesser and lesser and lesser, to a point where it's just natural. It just flows. Like, you've got such control over yourself and you're so aware of who you are and who you want to be, that you're able to navigate those situations really beautifully. And it's taken a long time, but it's probably the most powerful tool. And I want to go back to an earlier statement, which is, this isn't just applicable in the workplace. It's a game changer in your personal life too, in your relationships, friends, significant others, children, right? Where a lot of us are parents. Man, it's a game changer. And it truly does give you that complete and total feel of control over whatever circumstances you may face. So, my favorite leadership lesson, and so I'm always feeling very fortunate when I get asked to participate in this topic, because it's something that's changed my life. All right. So, does anyone else have something similar? Like, do you have a go-to? Like, what's your playbook when you have to deal with all the stuff that's flying at you in the world? Do you have a playbook?
Still in progress, I think, for me. I'll tie this back to work, just because it's something that I've been working on most recently, especially being a CE. We're learning more about how our actions as leaders are really impacting our escalations for our reps, because those scores don't stick with us. They either help or hurt our reps that we're taking those calls for if the survey is left. I thought I was doing all right. Come to find out, not really. So that kind of hurt. But at the same time, it allowed me to step back and think, okay, how am I going to handle these calls coming forward? And it's really just just changing my mindset of, okay, let's just start this from the beginning. And I've started really just starting my calls with my customers as, hey, give me what it is that I can help you with. That way I can avoid any preconceived notions. And I've actually used that with a customer. I'm like, I don't want to come in here with a preconceived thought of what I think you need. I want you to tell me what that is. And then it allows me to kind of just step back and just actually like actively listen to what those around me need. And just being aware of if there's something I know that could potentially like change my mindset or trigger me in a negative way, I put that aside, because in the moment I need to focus on what needs to be done, but it also allows me to be perceived how I want to be, which is professional, helpful, empathetic. And I know sometimes, like you said, the snarkiness can come out, and that's easy to happen. So just really being aware of myself and how I'm putting myself out there is really important for me, because I want to be perceived as like that caring individual. I don't want to come across as the snarky one that people just don't want to deal with.
Awesome. Thank you for being so vulnerable, Megan. I think that's one of the most powerful gifts that you can have, is that self-exploration and not being afraid to go into where it can be a little challenging, a little painful, to be like, oh man, like I did not live up to my own expectations. And once you go there, it's almost enjoyable, because you're like, oh, I get to grow, I get to improve, right? You take something that could really be, it could really tear you down if you stay there for too long, but just enough to realize like I can take this and turn it into a win. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. You're applying it, and you're setting an incredible example for your team to know that we all grow, like we all learn, we all have areas that we can strengthen. And it's not like, oh, I'm in the CE role, so I got this down. Like we're going to keep at it, and we're going to keep learning together. So thank you for sharing.
Of course.
Anybody else?
Well, I can tell you as far.
Did we lose his audio?
I think so. Oh.
Joel's still on that fiber cable setup.
Not everybody's wireless
All
like
right.
Gotta get that
Ah.
5G,
No,
man. Get that 5G.
Mhm.
I somehow twisted the cable around my chair sitting in one place. But yeah, I came in, and I've always kind of hung around the same people. I don't really expand out. I don't make a lot of friends intentionally. Like I just stick to myself. So when I first started working here, I had Jess Labby as a coach, and I ended up staying with her essentially as long as I could until I went to telesales, because she pushed me to do things I was uncomfortable with, not just at work, but outside of work. She would be like, "Hey, why don't you go and try to meet someone new, or do this?" Like she would give me things to do outside of work, which actually impacted me at work. I could get on the phone and I could talk to customers, because every customer is not the same. You need to get into a different mindset where you're able to communicate with anyone no matter who they are. And that was really one of my biggest roadblocks at the beginning here, is I did have a hard time communicating with people unless we were kind of the same type of person. So I kind of stuck with that even after Jess left. I went to Nesbitt's team as a coach, and then um, Jeff Hughes, and right now I'm with Caleb, and Caleb's very similar as me, but I went there because Nesbitt was the TM at that time, and now Maribel's the TM, and Maribel's also another person who has a different personality type. So like when I'm on break, I'll go and talk to Caleb, but I'll make it a point to talk to Maribel too, so I can keep having those interactions with people that are more personable, more outgoing, because I wasn't an outgoing person, and now I am more so because of working here.
Well, I think that's a pretty awesome revelation too, right? And brave, because most of us, I would say, I don't want to, put words in people's mouths, but we're going to stay in our comfort zone. We're going to stay in our lane and hang out with people or assimilate with people that we are familiar with. So kudos to you for stepping out. And that's such a huge skill to have because I know some of you are in this group because you're hoping to maybe better understand that leadership journey and potentially step into a role at some point, right? This is all about you. But one of the most important things about you as you become a future leader or within your role now as a leader is we work with so many different people. Even on one shift with 12 people, there are probably 12 different personalities. And there may be some commonality there, but for the most part, you'll find yourself having to flex your style. Well, you can't do that if you don't recognize yourself. Like, what's your starting point? And if you can start really getting a strong sense of self-awareness, man, it's incredible how you can then mold yourself and grow yourself to a point where you can interact effectively with anyone. And that's the same as Joel said with your customers, right? Every customer that calls in, and here's the cool thing, because you become really, really proficient with it. You have to do it quickly, right? You have to identify up front, what kind of person am I dealing with today? And how do I flex myself in a way that's going to be effective and impactful with this customer or my peers that are around me? How do I influence them? So, like, kudos to you, because that's a brave thing to do, to step out of your comfort zone, to align yourself with leaders who don't necessarily let you just just stay kind of complacent, right? They're going to push you, they're going to help you grow. That's huge. Nice job, Joel. All right, so Article 2 talks a lot about who's responsible for your life. We've had a lot of garbage going on in the world in the last few years. And man, it seems like it's always somebody's fault. It's always somebody's fault. And it's easy for us to make an excuse like, well, I didn't do X, Y, and Z because I had all of these other responsibilities or all of these other challenges, or X scenario is getting in my way. Or maybe even worse, like, this person is making it impossible. I can't do anything because of, these people that I'm around. So, how do you cope with that? Or did you gather anything from the reading that helped you kind of step back and reflect on how do you navigate this world that is like COVID 2022?
Well, I'll tell you, so when you look at things, it talks a lot about not placing blame and things like that. And I live here in Central Maine. My entire family is from way up north, Aroostook County, Fort Kent, that whole area. Same with my girlfriend. Her family's from Presque Isle. So we don't have anyone around us. I have primary residence of my daughter, so we're essentially a full-time parent all the time. We don't have a lot of the same. I see people all the time, like they're dropping their child off at their grandparents' house, they're doing things like that, so they get to do other things. So I went through a long time where I was very often saying, I wish I could do this, but I can't because I have no one to help me. I have no one to do this. And I did have to start changing that and saying, what can I do in this circumstance? What can I actually do here? That was around the same time I had started that degree program at Purdue that T-Mobile paid for. And that really set things off too. I'm like, I'm doing this college thing and I'm doing it right from home. I don't need to leave the house. I don't have to find a babysitter. I don't have to do anything. I can do it right here. And that kind of set off a chain reaction of finding ways to do things I want to do without saying I can't do it because of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, removing those roadblocks. And this is applicable again in so many scenarios, right? Like, I'll share too that I found myself wanting to, feel healthier in life and exercise, but I don't have time. I don't have time. Like, I'm busy and there's work and I've got a kid and I don't have time. And that was an excuse, right? And so just similar to what you described, Joel, is like I realized like that I need to make a change if I want to make a change. I'm in control of that, right? So I like to sleep, but I realized that getting up at 5 and exercising for 45 minutes to an hour, not only did it give me an accomplishment for that one element, but it started to unlock other doors. Like I have so much more energy. I feel stronger. I'm mentally more focused. I feel my ability to manage my stimulus space response is in such a better place. And so I share that simply to say that, man, if you can take just one step to put yourself in front of something that really is important to you, you don't even realize it creates a chain reaction of other positive events around you. Like the concept of positive positive visualization, right? If you dream it, you'll achieve it. It sounds tacky and corny, but it's about mindset, right? It's about knowing that you can make things happen and you're more conscious to make decisions or take actions to put yourself in alignment with whatever it is that you're hoping to accomplish in life. Now, if that would work for winning the lottery, that would be fantastic. But you know what the thing is, how many people say they want to win the lottery but never actually play? Ah, see? You gotta play. But if you say I'm gonna win the lottery, you're probably gonna go buy a ticket, and at least that's the first step. Please gamble responsibly.
I was just going to do the public service announcement. Darn it, you beat me to it, Amanda.
Seriously. All right, what else? What are some of the other takeaways? There's some of you I haven't heard from yet, and selfishly, I'm really interested to hear what's on your minds.
One thing I'll say is I think like it naturally feels easier to not take responsibility for things, but I'm big into like simplifying life. That like really works for me, like with my mental process. And I think sometimes if you take responsibility, it actually like makes things simpler, because it prevents you from like making excuses for like, oh, I'll never do this because of something else or someone else. Sometimes if you like, really dig in and just take responsibility, I feel like it actually simplifies things. So that's one
Hmm.
thing I'm trying to work on.
Yeah, like you feel like you have to have a certain level of validation or justification. So, like the number of excuses that you feel you have to bring to the table is far more work than just like digging in and getting it done. So, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, to
Cool.
build off what he said, and I get exactly where he's going with that, because once you do take that responsibility and you have the responsibility, you also have the control over it. If you're blaming it, you don't have any control over anything you're blaming. But once you have personal responsibility, you control your personal responsibility to whatever issue you're facing.
Nice.
I like that.
I saw a hand before, another hand that someone wanted to speak.
I'll just share, if anything. I don't know if, as far as how much impact, but I'm just coming back off of LOA, so I'm somewhat behind and trying to catch up. And I found myself kind of going down a rabbit hole with some of these articles because there's links within links, and it's been really great because I'll say that I moved to Maine almost 3 years ago and felt pretty successful. But of course, with any move, you get reacclimated, and then I started hitting some failures, some unexpected failures, right? And then all of a sudden, the pandemic came, and there was like no control over anything, or at least that's how it felt. And then it got to a point of decision fatigue because there were so many things we all needed to do or figure out. Like all of a sudden, I had a baby on the way, all these other kind of things, and I think I hit a plateau where it was like, okay, it's too much. It was easier to just sit on the couch, watch tons of streaming through Netflix and everything else, than figure out what next steps would be. And so now going back through this program now, it's been this thing of when it comes to taking responsibility, it's like, okay, that happened, yes, I still take a breath each day, I need to move forward, how do I do that? And so taking that responsibility and ownership for, all right, how do I do better when I'm at work? So coming out of a coaching and realizing that all I can do with each guest interaction is focus on how I can help them in that moment rather than, their entire T-Mobile experience, which is the kind of pressure I had kind of been putting on my back. Do what I can in that moment for them, do right by them, make them happy before they leave, move on to the next person. And so a lot of this has been growth as far as taking that responsibility again and taking my power back from myself that happened, and all right, now let's move forward. So that's kind of where I am.
Fantastic. That's amazing, right? That's such a great analogy too, because I think we've all felt that burden of like, I need to perfect everything in this moment. I need to make sure everything is aligned. And that mindset can be very daunting. And it's so overwhelming, like you said, that it may cause you to shut down. But when you create more realistic and bite-sized goals and targets for yourself, man, it makes it so much easier to tackle that mountain, right? You climb the mountain one step at a time. And what a huge revelation for you to have so that you can put yourself back on that path to success. Thank you for sharing. I love that.
I gotta say, he started off. You were talking about falling in the rabbit hole in the articles, and then you said the phrase decision fatigue, which I googled, and now I'm in that rabbit hole because that's amazing. Yeah, that's real. That's definitely real. And also, I don't know where you got the phrase. Is this something people are using? But you used the phrase guest interaction when talking about talking to customers. I like that.
So just to throw back, my hospitality is or my experience and background is 20 plus years in hospitality and hospitality management. And so that outlook that everyone that you interact with or bring with, even here in this experience, they're a guest of T-Mobile's. There's someone sort of like you're bringing to your home or into your life in that moment. And so that mentality, as far as how I treat them, is, how I try to go about every interaction with anyone we talk to on the phone. So.
I love it.
That's awesome. It
That's
made
so
me think of
awesome.
Target because they like Target, they have guest services instead of customer service. So I like that.
It's the same thing with Disney. I've been researching Disney like a crazy lady, and it is. They're all guests. I love it. I want to ask if you don't mind. You talked a lot about some of the challenges that you've encountered in the past couple of years. When you reflect back on that time, if you're comfortable to share, and this is open to anybody, but how do you feel about that time now looking back?
So I think some of it is time heals. Um, but I think initially all I could see, and this comes to like more to the first article we had, was how others had failed me, or when once it hit and this is not happening and things fell apart, and to be open about it, I was about to take ownership of a restaurant concept of my own. Like I said, I've been years putting into it, and got to the last moment where we're about to sign on the dotted line, and it fell apart due to a third party, right? But at that same time, how we approached that third party, how we went into it as a group, we probably could have done things differently with hindsight now. And so I'm finally at a point where I can take some ownership for that factor of, if I maybe have done this, that's okay, right? While also realizing that's in the past, it's not something I can deal with again, but I can learn from it and move forward.
Yes. You hit it. You learn from it, right? Like that's the power. And the real power comes when you're in the moment and you're like, this sucks. And you can stop and say, okay, yes, this sucks, but I know that I'm going to learn from this. And that in a year from now, I'm going to look back and I'm going to be grateful that now I know how to navigate that situation, or I can help somebody else navigate that situation more effectively. I will tell you that a leadership journey in general isn't all rainbows and butterflies. And ideally, it's not, because I will tell you, as a young coach, I struggled mightily. And I'm so grateful for it, because I honestly don't think I'd be the TM I am today if I hadn't had the struggles that a lot of us as leaders have. I wouldn't be able to help a new coach realize if they're, well intentioned but listing off 18 different things that we could have done better on that call. I did that. I was like, well, let me just give them all of this feedback. It's going to help them fix everything. And I realized that doesn't work. But the reality is that when you can realize in a moment that's challenging you that this is actually helping you grow, I call it growing pains. Um, wow, that's just such an empowering thing. And it helps keep your mindset in a positive space where it keeps you out of that victim status mentality. And you're like, okay, I'm gaining something from this. It might not be what I hoped. It's not exactly what I thought it would be, but I know that it's going to make me a better person on the other end of it. So awesome.
Yeah, Amanda, if you
Amanda.
don't mind, I think no, Megan, go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna say that just reminded me how I know I've learned myself that if I am one of those people that starts a journey, if I put it aside and like, oh, I'm gonna take a break, I'll come back to it later. I'm not gonna come back to it later. I'm just gonna let it sit off to the side. So when I started, just like Joel, I'm doing the whole Purdue thing, being paid for it by T-Mobile. I'm almost done. Like July 26th, I'm done.
Yeah.
Thank you. I there were so many times over the last 3 years that I've been like, "Oh, maybe I should just take a break, next term and then come back to it." But then I'm like, "No. If I take that break, I'm not gonna come back to this, and I am going to regret it every step of the way because I'm so close to that bachelor's in communication. I want that so badly, and I've put in so many long nights, tears, frustration. I don't want that to be for nothing. So I have like just pushed through because I know myself, like just learning my own thing. Like if I put it aside, I'm not coming back to it. So I was
Mhm.
like, no, I know if I don't do this now, I'm not gonna do it later, and then I'm gonna regret it forever. So just kind of making sure that I push myself. And now that I'm like at the finish line, I have one term left. I'm so excited, and I just finished the most recent term with 2 A's in the classes. I'm just super excited, and I have one term left, and it's just knowing yourself and what your limits are, and then pushing past those limits sometimes is what's needed. So that was for me. It's just knowing my own struggles and how to push through them.
Amazing. Yes, that self-awareness, right? It's a different context, but it's exactly that. You know that if you take a break, right? It's not a break because you're probably not coming back. And knowing that and not allowing yourself to make excuses and not allowing yourself to disappoint you.
Yes.
You have a huge accomplishment and congrats. That's
Thank
so
you.
amazing.
Thank you.
Best feeling ever. What you got, Zim?
I was just going to say the commonality of a lot of what everybody's sharing that I love that I'm taking away from this is, and I guess it's maybe obvious, I don't know, but it's much more so when you get to hear it said 9 different ways by 9 different people. It's that identifying the gap and then just making that first step of change. It builds confidence, right? Like you feel like you're doing something instead of just being helpless and sitting there and recognizing that victimhood like we talked about, or the situation you're surrounding yourself in. Just identifying a change that needs to be made and moving a little bit in that direction. That's so powerful to me, because that really ultimately what it comes down to for me in my world. I won't speak for everybody as if I'm a master on this, but it's building your confidence up, right? Like you need your confidence to be solid in order to be your best, because you need to be able to trust yourself, the decisions that you're making, the intentions and the plan that you've got set up in front of yourself. And it's hard to have confidence if you don't feel like you're achieving anything. So taking that responsibility and starting to make those adjustments, like Amanda, like you said, when you're like, hey, I got to start working out and getting up earlier. It's not like the first day you worked out, you achieved the results that you were looking for within the first 3 days. But every day, I mean, if you did, let me know, please, because I need to talk. Um, but the idea that that creates that momentum and that motivation that allows you to keep going, and then it impacts everything else in your life just due to that mindset of confidence. And that's kind of the reflection of what I've heard a lot of people talk about when they've described these situations. And I love that. It's inspiring.
Yeah, I love it too. And I will say, Megan, it resonated with me too. And you're like, I can't take a break because I won't come back to it. I was like, the same thing with exercise because I have an excuse every morning. I'm like, I'm so tired. And okay, here come my excuses. I had a long day at work. I gotta, I gotta do X, Y, and Z. It's gonna be a late night. Like, there's all these reasons. I have a headache. I woke up with a headache this morning. So I can just, I'll do it later, right? But I've made that mistake before, and doing it later meant after work, and it was a long day, and I didn't realize I had X, Y, and Z to do. And before I know it, I'm home at 7, and the last thing I want to do is exercise. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I love how like all of these strategies can be interwoven, right? To create whatever works for you. That's where you got to know yourself. So I do want to just share at least one more thought about this group. And last year, I think, because last year was the inaugural rotation, right? Okay. So I vaguely remember, and maybe I just created this in my mind. It's totally possible, but it makes for a great story. But I remember there was discussion around what's the name of the program? What are we going to name it? And so it came up as Empower. I thought at one point it was called Empower You. And as we were going through the conversation, realizing like, no, this is really about helping all of us learn how to get control over us. So it's Empower Me, meaning that we're going to help equip all of you with some tools and some thought processes and some strategies and with some amazing connections for you guys with each other, that you can take control of your career and you can learn the process that it requires. Because like, how many of us have waited to be tapped on the shoulder to be like, okay, it's time for you to go apply for this job, and then when it doesn't happen, you're like, huh, so what does that mean, right? But that's just not how this works, right? Go out there and make it happen for yourself. And in that journey, you learn so much about who you are and what you want. And it might be different than what you even thought you wanted for someone to kind of peg you for. But Empower Me is all about equipping you with the mindset that puts you in control of your journey. So I couldn't have hoped that we'd land on a more fitting title for this program.
I love that. Just wanted to say I love it.
All right. Any other reflections that we've had? I highlighted so much in these articles, so hopefully you guys picked up some of the same.
I love that you said how many people have just waited to be tapped on the shoulder, like, "Hey, there's a new job for you," because it's not going to happen. But one of the most powerful, one of the like things that Red actually said to me one time recently was, everybody says, everyone's like, "I want this, I want to get promoted, I want to do this things," but there's a much smaller percentage of people that actually apply for things. Um, and so I actually tried applying for an intern position. I didn't get it, but I did it. And that just doing that opened up so many more doors. Now there's conversations going with different departments, with my own coach and things like that, simply by just the act of trying to apply for something else.
Mm-hmm. And being in this program, right? Like, tell your friends, because Joel, I will tell you, I vaguely remember you from back 8 years ago with Jess Labby, but I didn't really know you, and I haven't seen your body of work since then. And I do remember some bits of last year's conversation, but I don't think that you were nearly as vocal. And so being in this program is also another great way for you to learn and grow, but also to network. Because I think I'm super impressed with what you've accomplished over these years that I had no idea. And we live in these little worlds of communities, which I love and I'm super proud of, but I don't get the opportunity to interact with you all. And how often do you hear when someone's going for, looking to pursue another opportunity, they're like, well, you need to network. Well, how do I do that? So this is such a great first step. So kudos to you for making that happen as well. And I've seen many of you guys on Oaktown and being celebrated for your contributions to your communities, but seeing you in a different light and hearing from you in a different way is really powerful and quite frankly enjoyable. So Oak 13, if ever there's a mini bid. Oh, we're being recorded. You can edit that, right?
Shameless plug. It's no big deal.
Jesus. All right, I want to see if there's anything else in here. I literally, look, I've highlighted so much of this article. So let's see. Ah, here's one. Make yourself happy. Realize that happiness does not come from outside you. We talked about this a little bit last night as well, right? We've all heard that saying, you complete me. What does that mean?
First,
Anybody?
it was a great movie.
That was a movie, not a program.
Jerry
No,
Maguire,
Film,
Jerry
right?
not a
Maguire.
film.
Jerry
No.
Maguire.
Show me
It,
the money. That
it
was
was
my
a
favorite
film.
part.
It was a film, not a movie.
It was a film, not a movie. All right, so the reason I bring this up is because we are responsible for our own happiness. And so it's a very cliche for us to hear, you complete me. And I know this isn't like a personal like discussion, but the reason it's relevant is because it's important for us to know that we need to be whole first and foremost, right? And the things around us or the people around us or the company that we keep might compliment us. You compliment me. But you need to be complete and whole first. Happiness comes from here. And if you're waiting for someone to provide that to you or for the world to shift in a way where happiness is just a natural byproduct, you're going to be severely disappointed, right? Take the steps necessary to create that for yourself, regardless of the circumstances around you. And that's not easy. It's not easy, but it's a mindset. And when you take steps and you simplify and you focus on what you can control, just that in and of itself, and knowing that you have the ability to harness positivity will help make you happy. I love it.
I think when we talked about this last night, it made me think of we talked about happiness. So I'm going to end up just repeating what Amanda said, but you know, the romanticism when we talk about happiness, when you say, and so I'll look at Nick in the morning. Hey, Nick, how many times have we either said this or heard this say, hey, Nick, you make me so happy? Right? It's kind of a romantic notion. We say that to the people that matter in our lives that we care, and we say, hey, you know what? You make me happy. And not to, you know, it's not, you know, Valentine's Day. So I'm going to kind of really break that down. And what it is, it's a transference of power and strength. You basically said, hey, without you, right? So the complete me piece, without you, then there's a void, or, you know, you're not making me happy. But really what we should at least say internally is, hey, Nick, I'm happy with you. And I hope you're not uncomfortable with that, by the way, Nick. It's nice meeting you.
That's a,
Right? But to really think and break that down, I'm happy with you. I'm happy with the things in my life. I'm happy with the choices that I've been afforded to make. It puts you back in that position of determination and allowing things to kind of filter through. So I think it is a powerful thing to consider on this. And I didn't know if you had anything else, Miss Amanda, because I'm dangerously close to going into my wrap up. So I'll back out real quick.
No, man, we hit everything that I had hoped that we'd get to today. So thank you all.
Can I give you a happiness quote? And I saw this last week, so it's fun. I didn't know we were going to be talking about happiness because I missed last night. This came up, and I was going to share it within the group. So I'll verbally share it, and then I'll paste it up there. But it's simple. It's just most folks are about as happy as they make their minds up to be.
Solid.
And that's it. That's it.
And real quick, Joel, did you find that on Google before Zim read it? All right, just checking because
No.
you've been on point all meeting.
He's He's gonna check to make sure I didn't misread it though.
Hells yeah. So listen, team. When I talked about this being literally a game changer, the topic seems rather straightforward, but it requires the most intense internal introspection from people. You have to really be vulnerable with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself about, are you willing to consider change when it comes to the buttons that are pushed in your life or the triggers that really kind of throw you? Are you willing to kind of map it out a little bit? Are you willing to also realize that this isn't kind of a, hey, I made a commitment on Tuesday? So the exercise analogy, I made a commitment on Tuesday and I just didn't get pissed by Wednesday. You have to understand that this is something that also takes time. It takes time and exploration and inner conversations and outer conversations. And I want you guys to kind of mentally track all this is what I'm sharing with you, because a lot of the stories that I heard from you were, hey, it took me a couple of years of looking back to realize that, you know, things could have been different, or I could have handled things different. I could have had a different outcome. So now you're in your present and you're examining this, and now you have to kind of project your future state, your future self. And boy, that's just a lot of really intense work, right? So I want you to consider it. This is one of those things too that almost always is better done with a mentor, a trusted, you know, compatriot. Talk to someone that you know that somewhat demonstrates some of these attributes. You've noticed that, you know, hey, there's this person that I work with or that I, is in my community that demonstrates, you know, this sort of ability to navigate through high stress, high anxiety, you know, things. And I want to learn from them. I want to share with them. I recommend that totally. And then I think going all the way back to like what Miss Sam was sharing her piece too is what we don't often realize, but I think you guys shared is that when you are not in control and you're not kind of considering the pieces that, well, where am I at within my situation, that time literally stands still. You've stopped moving, right? And when you kind of go, okay, what am I going to own? How am I going to process and internalize my controllables? Believe it or not, that weight that you feel lifted is because you're moving away from something that has, you know, kind of stopped you in your tracks. So I'd like you guys to consider that as well. The process and the act of taking full responsibility ensures that you'll always be in motion. Does that make sense? You know, and I think I heard this all through
Yes.
your stories. This was all of my, I got notes in the margins. You guys were getting such great stuff. So I want to do that. It's 9 o'clock, so let me do my close statement for y'all. Next, our next page in the playbook is always raise your standards. So at the close of this, I'll get out that one pager to you guys. Look for it. I'll put it in the Facebook group. I'll put it in the EmpowerME Slack chat. We YouTube. You guys are subscribers to our YouTube channel.
Yes.
Anyone possibly not hasn't got around to it yet? Because hey, guess what? I put the link in the chat. You know, get in there. Hit the link, subscribe to the channel. We will take one of the two sessions that we've had this week and we will commit it and put it up into the YouTube channel for you if you want to come back and revisit this conversation. Fantastic resource. And as we were going through this, we touched on certain points. Amanda had brought up around stimulus-based response. Well, those are also facets of emotional intelligence, which is a whole nother kind of piece. We talked last night about maybe in version 3.0 of EmpowerMe making it a standalone, but I think I'm going to work real hard to create a podcast around triggers and how you deal with them and how you move forward and kind of give yourself those control opportunities. So stay tuned, more to come there. And then my last piece is this, guys. Thank you so much for making time. I hope that we bring value to you. If there's something that we're missing, please let us know. I want you to remember to keep moving, keep pushing forward, and remember that we believe in you. Thank you, guys. Love you.
Bye, guys.
Good to
Bye,
see y'all.
guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank
Have a
you.
good morning.
Yes. Good night, everyone.